Welcome to BBC World News. I'm David Eads. Our top stories. Coronavirus cases in the US surpass the figures of any other country. More than 83,000 now confirmed. The death toll climbs sharply in Italy again. 5,000 have died in the last 7 days. Now fears that southern Italy could face a similar outbreak. As Europe continues to be the worst affected region, leaders of the G20 countries promise to inject $5 trillion into the global economy. Also, a stark warning from the UN that an outbreak of the coronavirus could devastate camps for displaced people in northwestern Syria. Thanks for joining us. There are now more confirmed cases of COVID-19 in the United States than in any other country. According to the latest figures coming from Johns Hopkins University, the US now has just over 83,000 cases, and that is a higher figure than China or Italy, in fact. And it comes as the total number of confirmed cases around the world has gone past 500,000. In terms of lives lost, well, countries in Europe continue to be worst affected. The death total in Italy, for example, stands at more than 8,200. There's been a jump in deaths in Spain as well. Also, another 115 people have died here in the UK after testing positive for the virus. That takes the total to 578. There are around 12,000 confirmed cases at this point. Let's start our coverage with the total number of cases as reported in the US. Here's our North America correspondent, Peter Bones.
Now the global epicenter. More positive tests for COVID-19 than any other country. In some communities, the number of cases is doubling every 3 days. More than a quarter are in New York City, where the emergency services say they're overwhelmed by people calling for help. It's worse, they say, than after 9/11.
And we're not even started yet. So if we're doing 6,000 today, it's going to be 8,000 tomorrow. More and more people are going to call. It's a sustained impact like this we've never dealt with.
At his latest briefing with the White House COVID-19 task force, President Trump was generally upbeat.
Beautiful day.
He responded to the surge in cases.
It's a tribute to the amount of testing that we're doing. We're doing tremendous testing. And I'm sure you're not able to tell what China is testing or not testing.
As more and more people fall sick, and with much of the country at a standstill, the virus has had a catastrophic impact on America's workforce. Social isolation orders and shuttered businesses have led to a huge spike in the latest jobless figures. 3.3 million people laid off because of COVID-19. Never before in US history has there been such a dramatic rise in unemployment.
They have to go back to work. Our country has to go back. Our country is based on that. And I think it's going to happen pretty quickly.
Mr. Trump said robust testing protocols might allow some counties in the country to lift their safeguards against the coronavirus. He said the White House was working on a plan to be revealed next week, although it wouldn't mean an end to social distancing. In the meantime, soldiers are setting up this field hospital in New York, and a 1,000-bed naval hospital ship is being deployed to Manhattan. Another is heading to Los Angeles, where local officials fear there'll be a critical shortage of beds in the coming days and weeks. Peter Bowes, BBC News.
Well, so much attention in the last couple of weeks at least has been on Italy, and the number of cases there, and indeed deaths, is on the rise again. People are afraid that the virus is spreading more quickly further south of the country now. Initially, of course, it was very much based around the north. One region has announced it is going to extend the lockdown to the 14th of April. Many others are expected to follow suit. So Italians have spent 2 weeks already based at home. Jean McKenzie has this report from Rome.
Hi, Alan. How are you?
How are you?
Yeah?
Be in no doubt. For Italians, this lockdown is serious. In the 18 days since it began, the Anini family haven't left their flat once. Only Alan's been out to get the food.
You're the brave one. Why have you chosen to be so strict about this?
Because we think it's the only way to overcome the situation. I mean, we saw the number of people infected and the number of people, the number of death people increasing day by day.
With hundreds more deaths announced here every night, this pandemic is still taking lives at alarming speed, and so the rules are getting tougher. We're invited to meet the commander of the local police.
Se dovessimo vedere in questi giorni un gruppo di persone, noi interveniamo con le nostre all'orario.
How often are you finding people breaking the lockdown?
Questi giorni abbiamo denunciato circa 200 persone. In realtà non sono tante. I romani si stanno comportando molto bene.
We're on the edge of the city here and police are stopping people from being able to travel any further. Although Italy has been in lockdown for nearly 3 weeks now, the restrictions just keep getting tighter and tighter. So now anyone caught leaving without a valid reason could be fined up to €3,000.
And anyone found with the virus outside their home, so not in quarantine, can be sent to prison for up to 5 years. Anything to stop the virus spreading, with fears the epicentre could be shifting from the north to down here and into the south.
L'ho presa male perché chiaramente come cittadino romano non vedere più le persone per strada chiaramente è come fosse per me un colpo al cuore, perché come fosse una guerra.
How much longer do you think you can do this for?
I don't know. We hope that a couple of weeks. And yes, we are spending much more time together as a family than before. And I think that is one of the positive things, if any positive things is coming out from this situation.
The lockdown will almost certainly be extended. For how long, no one knows. And so life in this new dimension must continue indefinitely. G. Mackenzie, BBC News, Rome.
Well, of course, every country is trying to work out the best arrangements for its own citizens. There's also now this growing concerted international effort to try and find common ground. I think we had President Trump and President Xi Jinping talking not very long ago, last couple of hours, and saying we must work more closely together. In that light, though, EU leaders have simply failed to agree on ways to help their economies get through this outbreak. Plans put forward by Italy, France and Spain, so the countries really worst affected, were rejected by Germany and the Netherlands. This is in the midst of a 6-hour video conference. Finance ministers have been given another 2 weeks to come up with some fresh proposals. Freya Cole reports.
2 Spanish nurses lean on each other before walking into an unprecedented crisis. They're the loved ones on the front line.
You go home with the images in your head of everything you see here. It is very difficult to disconnect. It is impossible.
The old people tell you in tears to move them to a bed, but who do you decide to move? This is a selection like in a war.
You feel very lonely, and then you come home and you are alone. You keep thinking and thinking, and it's hard to rest.
Spain now has the second highest death toll in the world, and the numbers keep rising. In France, the situation is also grim. High-speed trains are being used to transport patients from the east of the country, where the virus is most intense, to the west, where there's more space. Some patients have even been sent to other countries to seek adequate care.
I would like to thank our German, Swiss and Luxembourg neighbours that have taken in about 30 serious cases, just as we did for our Italian neighbours a few weeks ago.
Europe's economy is spiralling to the very brink of collapse. EU leaders, who met in virtual safety, are at odds over the best way out. There are calls for corona bonds to collectively bounce back from the turmoil, but the idea of shared debt has always been an issue for countries like Germany.
We've asked the Eurogroup to continue and to make some proposals within 2 weeks, and it will give us the possibility at the level of the European Council to discuss the different possible measures. And the important signal is based on the fact that each member state, we recognize that this crisis is exceptional.
But in 2 weeks' time, it's hard to imagine where the world will be on beating this coronavirus. Its rapid spread across Europe is cause for alarm for other countries watching the disaster unfold. Freya Cole, BBC News.
Okay, let's bring you up to date with some other news from around the world related to coronavirus. China and Russia, for example, they both moved to stop foreigners coming in. China says that it's halting most international flights. The authorities are worried that foreigners could trigger a second outbreak of coronavirus infections. A ban on international flights in and out of Russia, well, that's come into effect now, apart from emergency flights bringing Russians home. Scientists have suggested that the pandemic would have caused 40 million deaths across the world if it had been left unchecked. The researchers from Imperial College London say rapid, decisive and collective action is required by all countries to save millions of lives over the course of the next year. South Africa has begun a 3-week nationwide lockdown to try to contain the coronavirus outbreak. Security forces are on the streets of major cities and towns to enforce that lockdown, with all but essential movement forbidden. Food shops are allowed to stay open. Alcohol sales, though, have been banned.